Welcome back, everybody. It is Orange Hat here to bring you another theme stream for January, where I take very similar movies and go over which ones are better in terms of story, cast, writing, effects, acting, leads, music, and score. And as you can see right here, it is going to be Braveheart versus Gladiator. So, um, without further ado, let's get into it. And let me just say hello to you all. Gonna hide that. So, hello, everybody. So, Braveheart versus Gladiator, both great movies. Both, well, one is a '90s movie, one is a 2000s movie. I mean, it's gonna be hard because I'm recording or I'm the way I'm doing this, folks, I'm not scripted. I'm not doing this with a script. So what I tell you here and now is basically my recollection of each film, which I watched recently, and how both of those films, from my own recollections and objective analysis, which one is better. So we will start with the story here. Now, the story for um, Braveheart, while indeed heavily flawed in historical accuracy, it is heavily flawed. The story is about William Wallace and how he fought to basically convince the Scottish nobles to win their independence from Britain because Britain was basically taking over the entirety of the United Kingdom. And this started in 1280 AD, so the year 1280, and ended in 1314. This movie takes place over a 34-year period, and it goes on to, I believe it did have the Robert the Bruce semi sequel. Now, the story is very compelling. It shows, or the focus is on uh, Mel Gibson's character. And Mel Gibson plays William Wallace, who essentially saw at a very young age what the British were like. Under a banner of truce, lured Scottish nobles to a cabin to discuss a truce, and they ended up slaughtering them. Edward the First, or considered Edward the Longshanks, betrayed the Scottish and wanted them to basically submit. Well, after losing his father and brother, because they felt that they should have fought against the British after doing that, he had to go off with his uncle Argyle. And he went on a pilgrimage. He's been to Rome, France. He's learned Latin. He learns all sorts of different languages, Latin and French. And he comes back to Scotland as an adult, as Mel Gibson. And he finds a woman that, as a young child, gave him a flower, a thistle, when he was, or when his parent, or when his father and brother were being laid to rest. She showed a bit of kindness to him, and he never forgot that kindness. And so when he sees her, it's an immediate remembering. She doesn't remember him, mind you. And he also had a friend named, what was his name? He was played by Brendan Gleeson, Hamish. And after trying to live in peace, except with English rule making it very difficult, he basically is forced to retaliate. When he marries Murrin, played beautifully by Catherine McCormick, um, she is killed after she fights off an English soldier trying to rape her. So he then basically goes on a vengeance mission and is tired of the English and their rule. So he tries to, or he goes on a campaign to fight against the English. And he actually does a pretty good job at harassing the English. And then he actually wages open war with them. This movie is very powerful. It shows heartache, tragedy, joy, love, has all essential elements of making an award-winning film, in which this movie was, I believe, an award-winning film. And then we have Gladiator, where Braveheart is focused on a country fighting against tyranny for their freedom and independence. This movie is based, or Gladiator is based on a general who was betrayed and has to fight for his own freedom and independence, but also to give liberty and freedom back to the people of Rome. So yes, what our Gladiator takes place, I do believe, in 980 AD. So what year does Gladiator take place? I do believe it is 180 AD, not 980, but 180. So 180 Anno Domini. Um, this movie, or both of these movies, in their full extended editions, are 3 hours long. The pacing is very good for each of them. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the story for Gladiator is Russell Crowe's Maximus is a general to the last Caesar, Marcus Aurelius. And one second, folks. Marcus is willing to give the Senate, or his power as Caesar, back to the Senate to let people govern themselves again. Because at the time, Rome was was a republic before the fall of Rome, which went to the progression of the Caesars. And then the Caesars went on, had their rules, and or as dictators, while the Senate still existed, there was very little power. And so he decided that he wanted to cede power back to the Senate upon his death. Well, his son did not want that. He wanted to be Caesar. So he ends up killing his father, played brilliantly, by the way, by I believe it was William Hurt, or not William Hurt. Oh God, I forget his name. Gladiator cast. Richard Harris. No, William Hurt. Jesus, I had that way off. But yes, Richard Harris, who played Marcus Aurelius, and Joaquin Phoenix was also brilliant in this movie as Commodus, as well as Connie Nielsen playing his sister. But yes, he betrays Maximus, has him taken off to be executed. He survives because he rides home to his home because he wanted to go home. He simply wanted to go home after winning the last war against the Germanians for Caesar. He asked, all I really want to do is go home. But Caesar gave him one last order to bring the power of Caesar back to Rome and to give the power back to the Senate and to deliver that message to the senators. He was unable to do that because Joaquin killed his father and then took over as Caesar. And so instead, Russell Crowe races home to Spain in order to find his wife and child crucified by the Roman army or by Roman legionnaires. And so he then gets picked up and enslaved to where he becomes a gladiator. And then they bring back the games at the Colosseum in Rome as Commodus is setting forth his rule. People do not like the or Caesars anymore. The Senate wants to be, or they want the Senate to be the ruling body. Well, while all of the politics and such is going on, Maximus finds his way through his slavery to the Colosseum. And after allowing his group of fellow slaves to win in a historically contradicted display of the Battle of Carthage, the barbarians were supposed to lose. They were the barbarians, and instead they won. The emperor came out and he's like, "Don't turn your back on the emperor." Well, he turned his back on the emperor, and so he commands him, "You will remove your helmet and tell me your name." Brilliant scene here, folks. And he takes off his helmet and he tells him exactly what his name was. Also loyal to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, husband to a murdered or father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my revenge in this life or the next. And in that moment, which is said later on by Connie Nielsen's character, I saw a slave become more powerful than the emperor of Rome because everybody in that Colosseum wanted him to live after he announced his full intention to kill Commodus. So we then see how Commodus basically tries every method to kill Maximus. Doesn't work. And finally, after a botched escape, he then or Commodus basically allows him to fight him, and he dies. And then Maximus also is killed due to a cheat before the start of the fight. He is stabbed in the back by Commodus and has the wound concealed so he can fight him. And, well, after he fights him, he is able to convey his final message. It's funny, or it's not funny, but it's interesting that both main characters, die at the end of the movies or each of their respective movies. The stories are very compelling. Um, However, the one that resonates with me more is Braveheart, because Braveheart, I mean, you just can't get over the fact that Mel Gibson is playing a character that is fighting for the freedom against tyranny for a nation and their independence. And as an American, I do very much resonate with that. Plus, with today's current political climate, it does seem like it might be necessary for another frickin' war against a tyrannical rulership or tyrannical rule. I'm not saying that I want one to happen, but it may be necessary that one does. But anyway, so yes, in terms of story, Braveheart is the first one to gain a point. And now we will go to cast. So the cast for Braveheart, as I am showing right here, I recognize Mel Gibson, Sophie Marceau, Catherine McCormick, Angus McFadden. I've seen him in several movies. Patrick McGowan, James Robinson as the younger William Wallace. I do not recognize him. But let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Brian Cox. 7, Brendan Gleeson. 8, James Cosmo. 9, Tommy Flanagan, who is also in this movie who is in both Braveheart and Gladiator. Also, David O'Hara, I've seen in several movies. I do believe there was another one down here somewhere. I guess not. So, counting them out, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 for Braveheart. Great cast all, folks. Don't get me wrong. Great cast all. So now let's look at Gladiator Cast 2000 because they got some or a needless casting for Gladiator 2. But let's see here, show more. So there was 10 for Braveheart. As for Russell Crowe, or for Gladiator rather, one, two, three, Oliver Reed, four, five, six, Spencer Treat Clark, I do remember. Seven, Tommy Flanagan. Jaimin Honshu, eight. Sir Derek Jacobi, nine. Let's see here. Tony Curran, 10. I did recognize him in the movie, and it's like, huh, small bit part, but hey. So there's 10 in Tony Curran, or in Gladiator, as well as Braveheart. Now, when it comes to how many more movies do I know all these characters from, going back for a moment to Braveheart, I know Mel Gibson very well when it comes to his movies. Angus Madden, a few movies here and there. Patrick McGowan, two movies at best. Brian Cox, six movies. Brendan Gleeson, six or seven movies. James Cosmo, I've seen him in three or four different productions, movies and TV. Tommy Flanagan, Jesus Christ, what haven't I seen him in? David O'Hara, I've seen him in, I do believe, two or three different productions. This movie, Wanted. I do believe I may have seen him in Smoking Aces. I can't remember if it was Smoking Aces or something else. And that is it. So I've seen quite a few of these actors in some of these. I've seen Sophie Marceau in like one or two other movies. I do believe maybe even three. I know I've seen her, and I think it was Die Another Day, or The World Is Not Enough, one of the two. Catherine McCormick, I've seen in one or two different movies. So, but going back to Gladiator, Russell Crowe, Connie Nielsen, Joaquin Phoenix, I have seen in so many movies. Richard Harris, I've seen in like four or five movies. The two Harry Potters, this movie, Orca, and a few others. Spencer Treat Clark, I've seen in or as a kid. That I mean, he made his way around as a kid. Tommy Flanagan, again, I've seen so many freaking movies with him. Jaimin Honshu, you've seen or I've seen so many freaking movies with him. Derek Jacobi, I remember him in this movie in the Underworld franchise of Underworld Evolution, as well as a few other roles here and there, maybe like two other roles. So yeah, there are, or Tony Curran, I have seen in like four or five different roles. So yeah, when it comes to this particular, um, when it comes to this particular category, cast, it's hard to call. I mean, it really is hard to call because, but when it comes down to it and I actually have to make a decision, Gladiator does take the point because Gladiator has more actors that I am aware of. So I am more aware of Gladiator cast in more movies and more roles. But believe me, that was a hard one to call. So right now it's tied 1-1 with Gladiator taking the cast, Braveheart taking the story. So now we are moving on to writing. The writing for both films, holy crap, man. Let's see who was the writer for Braveheart. Who wrote Braveheart? Randall Wallace. I wonder if there's any relation to William Wallace. So, Gladiator. Who is the writer for Gladiator? David Franzani and Daniel P. Mannix. Um, I don't recognize their names. However, folks, I will say this. I do think that the writing for both movies are freaking great. Both are rife with historical inaccuracies. However, you have to have a story that really truly resonates with you. And the writing really needs to hit you in certain spots, not just dialogue. I'm not just talking about dialogue when it comes to writing, but the story as well as how certain people act, what actions they take, the battle sequences. All of that is part of the writing. So when it comes to the writing, um, you have great choreography, you have great fight sequences in both these movies. One is a more traditional sense of battle where you are seeing troops on the battlefield fighting, banners and whatnot. And then you see you see a similar fight like that with the beginning of Gladiator, but then all the fights afterward are more personalized. You also see some more personalized fights in Braveheart as well. The shock sequences that are best written, in my opinion, I mean, while both movies have r- or great scenes written, great dialogue written, Braveheart ekes by because you have so much that is or very much quotable from that movie. You have quotable lines from Gladiator. I will have my revenge in this life or the next and whatnot. But when you have ones like every man dies, not every man truly lives or really lives, and you have other friggin' lines that are so freaking beautifully said and acted out and whatnot. Sorry about that. Um, it comes down to the writing where Braveheart really does have a better uh writing because you have character, specifically the death scene where you have William Wallace being tortured, being sliced open, stretched, racked, hung, and then finally beheaded. But as he is looking out before the axe comes down, he is seeing his dead wife. And she is smiling, saying, "It is okay. We will be together, or we are about to be together." And then you see the ending where you see Robert the Bruce finally step up to fight at Bannockburn. That fight or that event did happen. The Battle of Bannockburn, Falkirk, the battles of Braveheart did happen. They may not have happened the way that they are shown. However, the results of those battles are very well known. Gladiator, you have great writing. The climax of that is uh Maximus dying and finally or slowly going home before he dies and before he or also is able to give his final message. And then he is allowed or he allows himself to die. And Jaimin Honshu, man, damn, I will see you again, but not yet. Not yet. Jaimin Honshu, such a great actor. He is such a great actor. it is hard not to respect that man's craft. But when it comes to the writing for these films, Braveheart does take it. The writing is very beautiful and very heartfelt. You feel that this person is literally pouring as much of himself as much as the events of history, even though the movie is rife with historical inaccuracy. But you feel that this man had a very deep passion for the story. So yes, Braveheart takes writing. So now we are moving on to effects. Folks, the effects. Braveheart had a lot of good um physical effects, as does Gladiator. However, Gladiator does have some split screen effects when there is a or the battle of Maximus and Tigris, where there are tigers coming up to swipe at characters as they are fighting in the arena in the Colosseum. Um, you do also have some scenes that have practical effects in Braveheart, and you have some screw ups in both of these movies. When you have a fake horse dropping down into the water when Wallace rides into that noble's room and kills him, and then he has to just jump out with the horse out into the water, into the lock. You could tell that that horse is not real. You could tell that that horse is definitely not real. Um, you also see a screw up in the Battle of Carthage sequence in the Colosseum, where one of the chariots that flips over, the covering or the cloth covering comes undone, and you see you see a very modern compressed air tank in that chariot. So, yeah, these movies do have some glaring mistakes. However, when it comes to practical effects, dear God, man, I must say that Braveheart takes this movie or takes this one because you got practical effects of limbs being severed. You have practical effects of freaking fights and people getting smacked with rocks and whatnot, of a siege. You just have so much practical effects and so much special effects and whatnot. It works really well for Braveheart, and it does too for Gladiator. However, the split screen sequences with the tigers and the inserts of the tigers, you can tell they're inserted. So when it comes to quality of effects, Braveheart does take it because, or hold on, I got to update the score. Braveheart, yeah, it takes it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Story, cast, writing, effects. Yeah, Braveheart takes it. So moving on to acting. Um, you have award-winning acting from both sides. Russell Crowe did a great job as Maximus. Jaimin Honshu plays his role extremely well. Joaquin Phoenix, Richard Harris, Jesus Christ. You have all these actors who are so powerful with their acting that it's hard to really or say that Gladiator doesn't run away with this one. I mean, as good as Mel Gibson in the movie Braveheart is, Mel Gibson is the very, very well-known actor in that one, where other very, very well-known actors have smaller bit parts where you care for them, yes. However, the acting is extremely well, yes. But when it comes to the acting quality of the many upfront characters in Gladiator, Gladiator shows that it definitely has much better acting because you have scenes where these all these characters get their moments, and all of these characters are definitely much or have to deliver such in-depth performances that they can't help but put forward their best. And when it comes to sequences in Braveheart, it's mostly just William Wallace or England. What's going on in one place or the other. Where in Braveheart or in Gladiator, you have the senators, you have Commodus, you have a sister, you have Matt or Proximo and Maximus, Russell Crowe, as well as Tommy Flanagan's character in both of those movies. um, Tommy Flanagan's character is is more noticeable in um, Gladiator than it is in Braveheart. So when it comes to the acting in our fifth category here, um, Gladiator takes the point. Where yes, Gladiator does indeed take the point. Now, leads. When it comes to the leads of these movies, let me Brave Braveheart lead cast. The leads for Braveheart were Mel Gibson, Patrick McGowan, and I do believe Catherine McCormick. As brief as her role in the movie was, still is the lead that they chose to go with. Or honestly, I would have picked Sophie Marceau, but Mel Gibson as the lead, Patrick McGowan as the lead, and Brendan Gleeson, I would actually choose as a third lead for that one. All great actors. Where in Gladiator, you have Russell Crowe, Connie Nielsen, and Joaquin Phoenix as the leads. Shit. As much as I like Mel Gibson's Braveheart, when you have Connie Nielsen, Joaquin Phoenix, and Russell Crowe, you tend to notice them a little bit more. Their acting, their roles are a lot better shown and better expressed. So when it comes to the leads, Gladiator definitely takes the lead in this one. So now that we have a tie, or takes the point rather. So now that we have a tie of 3-3 between Braveheart and Gladiator, we now move on to the tie breaking of the music score. James Horner did the score for Braveheart. Hans Zimmerman and Lisa Gibson, I do believe. Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerard. So it's between Zimmer and Horner essentially. And when it comes to the score and the music, you notice that, or if you actually were to watch Pirates of the Caribbean as well as Gladiator next to each other, you will notice that there are very similar musical strokes because Hans Zimmer also did Pirates of the Caribbean. But when it comes to Braveheart, That score is so emotional. When you watch Braveheart and you hear the score, you are feeling so many emotions, man. I can't help but cry when I watch both of these movies. But when it comes to the beauty and the writing of the score for these movies, Braveheart really does shine. Holy crap, does it shine, or does that movie shine with its score? And the soundtrack for Gladiator, do not get me wrong, it is exceptionally well done. However, um, it's not as noticeable unless you really do focus in on it. You or when you see certain scenes, you have flair, or when it comes to Gladiator, you have certain scenes where you have a great score building up the or for the scene and having a good crescendo. And you also do have the song Now We Are Free. But when it comes to when it comes to Braveheart, you have a beautiful score throughout that film that is so evenly done, that is so beautifully written. And when you have an uneven score, that hurts in quality because you have certain scenes that are very good, yada yada, and then you are with the music and it swells very well, and then you have it where it's not even noticeable. Where when you see it in Braveheart, that score is just with you through the entire film. And one cannot help but notice that as they watch the films. If you were to watch these movies one after the other, you would notice a very big difference in the scores and how one is more noticeable and the other is not. I'm sorry. Gladiator's score, as much as I do like Zimmerman's music, I do feel that his score suffers when compared to James Horner. So, yes, Braveheart takes the tiebreaker and becomes the winner of this theme stream of Braveheart versus Gladiator. Braveheart has a lot more to it, has a much wider scope of the film, while Gladiator also has a very wide scope. It can focuses more on just the characters and as well as the politics around it, yes, but it's mostly character driven. Where while Braveheart is also character driven, it also evenly pans out every aspect of the film. You have the politics, so to speak, you have the war, you have the characters, where in Gladiator, you have the characters, you focus a little bit on the politics, but mostly on the characters. And yes, you also hear about the surrounding of what goes on in Rome. It's not as even as Braveheart. And Braveheart, to me, is the better movie. Do not get me wrong, folks. I love both of these movies, and chances are I will be watching them as soon as I log off of this video. But yes, Braveheart takes it. Braveheart is the better movie. Gladiator is very good. However, it is just not good enough to really match Braveheart in its scope of story and its music and otherwise. My gosh, folks, Braveheart just really does resonate, especially when it comes to a country that wants its freedom. I resonate more with that. Personal freedom aside, our country's freedom, because of what's going on in our political climate currently today, I resonate more with Braveheart. But both of these movies are very beautifully well done objectively. Where Braveheart, I would give an objective score of 8.9 to a 9. I would give Gladiator an 8.5. Objectively, they're very beautifully well done movies, but they both also have their flaws as well. Anyway, folks, that is going to be the video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sorry that this couldn't have been a live stream, but unfortunately, YouTube has dragged its heels. So yes, I am going to cut it here. You all are freaking awesome folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I will see you next month for more versus streams. However, they are going to be um, originals versus reboots. Which ones are better, and so on. So with that out of the way, folks, make sure that you tune in tonight, where I will be on the Barroom Podcast Society Reviews channel. Hopefully by tomorrow, I will have my live stream privileges reinstated because YouTube has to reinstate them so we can do our last movie for Nick Cage New Year's with me and Mara at 8 p.m. Wednesday night, which is Face Off. I will see you all then. You all are freaking awesome people. Make sure that you have a beautiful night. And always remember, folks, to stay humble. Have a good night and always take care.
Are you done? Are you done?